Hello and welcome to the Game Football Podcast from The Times. Chelsea are Europa Conference League champions after a 4-1 win against Real Betis ensured a trophy in his first season for Enzo Maresca and the first silverware for the new ownership group. On today's show, we'll discuss their victory, Cole Palmer's brilliance, more misery for Manchester United in a post-season friendly, preview the Champions League final, and loads more. I'm Tom Clark, and joining me today we have the chief correspondent for The Times and Sunday Times, Martin Samuel, and the former Chelsea, Millwall and Ireland striker, Tony Cascarino. Chaps, Chelsea 4-1 winners then. It's nice and easy sat here on Thursday morning to think, well, that was all straightforward, wasn't it? Not quite so straightforward in the game itself. Tony?
Yeah, I would say that performance last night, and I've seen Chelsea probably live half a dozen times this year, and I've come away. I remember doing a piece earlier in the season and saying, I just don't see a 90-minute team in Chelsea, but they're really good when they're on.
In bits.
In bits.
Yeah.
And, you know, I've seen 45 minutes performances. I remember watching them at Palace and thinking, God, a terrific side, Chelsea. For 70 minutes, by the end of the game, they were lucky they got a draw because it ended 1-1. And I thought last night was exactly what I've seen all season of this team. When they're on like they were in the second half and how poor they were in the first, that's Chelsea.
Yeah.
And they've obviously lifted the cup. I know there was a lot of good things in that second half performance, which I know we're going to talk about. So
yeah, absolutely. Well, Martin, that's kind of to be expected, and also a good thing maybe for Chelsea going forward. You know, the things Tony said there.
I don't think playing for 45 minutes
Not impressed.
is a good thing. No, I don't think playing for 45 minutes is a good thing. You've got to play for 90 minutes.
But in terms of the potential to go forward, to build on this, because that's what this is about, isn't it? Everyone said at the start of the season, I think basically everyone on this podcast, everyone in football media said Chelsea are going to win the Conference League. So if they hadn't, it would have been a disaster.
It's a greater achievement to come fourth in the Premier League than to win the Conference League, without a shadow of a doubt. If they'd have had the season that Tottenham had and won the Conference League, that would not save the manager's job the way winning the Europa League may save Ange Postecoglou. But I haven't seen, I'm with Tony on this, I cannot remember seeing Chelsea, maybe Wolves, I don't know, seeing Chelsea play a good game all season. And by a good game, I mean a game where for 90 minutes you thought, you know, Chelsea are playing really well here. I've seen them have fabulous 45 minutes of football. I've seen them when I've looked at it, and I thought Enzo Maresca played them down when they got to late December. I mean, I find it quite ironic. Maresca talking about all the people that doubted them. You know,
when we were just
the biggest culprit.
When he was the biggest culprit, and all
we thought of you on Monday. Gregor was saying, "I quite liked how chippy he's been," and I was like, "Yeah, he wasn't being so chippy earlier in the season," which was exactly your point.
Which was my point.
Yeah.
And when they were a win away from going top. A win at Everton, who couldn't win a game, couldn't win enough games to have a slump at that time, and he was playing them down all the time. But when they play, I'm totally with Tony on this. When they play, they're a good team. They're a very good team. I'm not even buying all this stuff about how young they are, because you know they've got fellas who won a World Cup nearly 3 years ago now. So there's two different forms of youth in football. There's actual age, and then there's
experience.
Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Lamine Yamal will still be a young player when he's played 400 games for Barcelona.
Yeah.
He won't be a young player because he's played 400 games for Barcelona. Yeah. I was looking at Gusto last night. You look at Gusto's, he's played 147 first-team games, not for Chelsea, but you know, across his career. He's not a kid. He's not Miles Lewis Skelly or whatever. You know, who in about a year's time he'll play his 100th game, or maybe a year and a half's time play his 100th game for Arsenal. So, I think Chelsea are potentially a very, very good team. But I stand by. I cannot remember a game this season where they've sustained that for 90 minutes. I'm totally with Tony on this.
Is there though a point? Is there a point about the manager, though? You talk about that experience and that he's not been a manager at this level before. You know, he won the championship with Leicester. Great achievement. worked with Pep Guardiola. That's always a great badge for any modern coach. That seems to get you through the door at most places.
Yeah.
But this is his first season at a big club at this level. Is there a case to be made, maybe not for the players then in terms of inexperience, but for Maresca, for the coach, that actually fourth and the Conference League is a great season or just a good season, Tony?
Well, I don't. If you take previous owners before, I don't think this would have ever been considered a great season.
No,
but this is a new era, though.
Sacked for coming second.
Yeah.
But this is a new era. This is a new ownership group, a new model.
Yeah.
Is there not a case to say, Gary Jacob on Monday's show was saying, I don't think anyone would have said Chelsea for fourth. Would we at the start of the season? I think fourth.
Going back to the points we've talked about, is there are periods you come away going, God, they're a good side.
Yeah.
They are. They just don't do it for over a period of 90 minutes.
Yeah.
You see the brilliance of certain... the second half was so typical of their season for me last night.
Yeah.
Watching them. And obviously we do all this messaging with players that I know and we chat, and we all sort of come up with the same sort of reason of why Chelsea have not been, not the team that Mike was talking about from mid-December up until nearly the new year, where they were really in with a shout, really close, and the only culprit of the downplaying it was the manager.
Yeah. So everyone else was saying this Chelsea team, it could come right a lot quicker than people thought.
So where are we at then, chaps? Where do we think? I'm trying to work it out, because as I say, going into this podcast, going into this final,
it helps if you get to the right team, which Maresca did eventually after an hour. That's certain things that I do not understand.
But are there things to build on from here? And are we feeling more? Would we be more positive in our end of season analysis about Chelsea?
Well,
than with questions.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would say there'd be the positive going forward if next season Reece James plays regularly and starts most games
at
right back.
Yeah.
I think that's a massive player for them. He just is. He's a very complete player.
They looked different once he was on, didn't they?
Yeah, absolutely. Changed the whole dynamic of the team.
If they had leadership and everything.
Absolutely. And then you go Cole Palmer, who's got 3 goals since the start of the year, which is, he's had a disappointing season. But you watch him last night, and I know we're going to talk about him anyway, but you watch him and he makes things happen. Yeah. I think Fernandes is a terrific player alongside Caicedo. Caicedo is now the £100 million player that they bought and looking like it.
Well, that's, on Caicedo, we're going to maybe mention this later, Tony, but Caicedo's in your team of the season. He was in lots of our colleagues' teams of the season. I'm just building to this idea that there are lots of things for Chelsea to take.
More positives than negatives.
Overall, but you still think, are the questions then over the players or the manager, Martin? These questions that you and Tony seem to be raising, are they more about the manager or the group or the club? What are the answers that are needed to be found this summer?
They need a striker. They need an actual proper out-and-out goal scorer. They need a goalkeeper. They need someone who can judge who a goalkeeper is, because they had 6 of them.
Yeah.
And they don't appear to have spotted. They seem to have got them in reverse order. And so that is true. They've got certain players that you look at and think, right, could you win the title with Badiashile as one of your centre-halves? If in the event of someone getting injured, you think, I'm not sure they've got that. I'm not sure they've got that strength in depth. Lavia is a huge player for them and was a huge miss last night.
Yeah.
You can't keep just throwing it all up in the air around we're going to buy the best young prospects in the country. There comes a point where you've actually got to start looking upwards. There's something that David Dean used to say, and he was talking actually about clubs that were in the mid-table and that were always looking behind them, always looking at, how do we not go down, making decisions all based around not going down. And he would say, there comes a time when you've actually got to look upwards.
Right.
You've got to actually go, right, what could we do here?
Yeah.
And I grew up supporting and watching one of those teams, West Ham, and it's absolutely always the dilemma at West Ham is which way should you be looking? You know, and the dissatisfaction with the fans and the club sometimes is they think the club are always looking to stay up, or did think that the club are always looking to stay up, and actually they should be looking to go further forward. Well, that's true with Chelsea as well. You can't just go, right, here's another promising 21-year-old from Santos, you know, who may or may not need 3 seasons and a loan at Strasbourg or whatever. And you've actually got to go, right, we buy a centre forward that can win the league.
So we've
got the players that could win the league. If we get a good goalkeeper and a good centre forward, a lot of the other players are increasingly in place. They've actually got a kid called Santos, haven't they? He's going to come back from Strasbourg, who is a fabulous player by all accounts.
But so you think then, linked to that, some of the news that we're reading on the Times website about players like Liam Delap, you know, with his low release clause, Chelsea competing with Manchester United for his signing. You think actually you should be going up several notches and not going for a backup striker to Nicholas Jackson. You should be going a superstar and make Nicholas Jackson your backup.
Yes, potentially. I mean, look...
Or battle for the shirt. Yeah. If someone's not doing it, then you have someone who... I mean, look, Nicholas Jackson, the Chelsea miss at the end is really typical of what he's like. His poor touch in a moment describes Nicholas Jackson. Yeah. He is a good player.
That hamstring he had looked like it had recovered very quickly, didn't it, for the celebrations? Because one minute it was, I've just had the worst touch in the history of football, all because my hammy's gone. And the next minute it's hopping around the pitch, you know, wrapped in the Senegalese flag. So you're thinking, that was a lightning recovery.
Taking your point about looking up then, looking up at the teams above them, you've got the champions Liverpool, you've got Arsenal, Manchester City. All three of those teams are going to be expecting their fans, their ownership, the players, the managers to go for the title. Yeah. How far away are Chelsea, do we think? You know, talking about players
Chelsea
like Nicholas
Jackson. Should be going for the title next season. They should be looking to go for the title. And the person the teams that they should be rivaling for players should be Arsenal, Manchester City. That's the market they should be in now. Arsenal are looking to find a centre forward to top that team off, to go, right, if we get a prolific centre forward, we can win this. That's the market that Chelsea should be in. Chelsea shouldn't be a work in progress again.
You only have to look at, and just adding to what Martin's saying, you only have to look at the teams that were successful before. If you go through the 80s and look at Liverpool, they bought the best players around. John Barnes was available. They got him. And many, many others. And Manchester United did a similar thing. You know, Arsene Wenger did a similar thing as well. You can look at the clubs who are competing for the very best players and say, you know, when Man City bought Haaland, there was a big reason why they got him. It's because they already got a great manager in place and they're being successful. You know, I made the point early in the season because, you know, being on radio, on a podcast and people are chatting, say, you know, what Liverpool? And I said, well, the best way of keeping Van Dijk and Salah is to win something. If you win things and people believe at the club that there's more of this coming down the road, I know players, they're going to get great money wherever they go. Whether they stay or whether they move on, they're getting great money. Mo Salah's not going to take a deal that, I didn't get as much. Barcelona wanted. You know, just all that. They will stay if they believe they're going to achieve something.
Well, definitely one of those players that qualifies as the top players is Cole Palmer. We've talked about him very briefly already, having a big decisive role in the game last night. Tony, you mentioned a slight drop-off this season in terms of his performance. We've got some stats here from the 2 seasons. Games played this season 46, last season 45. Started as well is roughly the same, 41 and 40. Goals this season 15 in all competitions versus 25 last season. Assists 11 this season versus 15. There is a case to say 15 goals and 11 assists for a player in his position is brilliant. Is it that he's dropped off, or is it that actually this is maybe the standard for a player in his position, and that last season was just stunningly superb and amazing and a one-off?
Well, he might be a bit streaky as well. You know, there are streaky forwards who get loads of goals in smaller patches. He could be a midfielder and streaky. I mean, I watch it, and the thing was so intriguing about him is that if you think about the way he left City, and I kept thinking, imagine listening to his press conference afterwards and listening to, you know, how he talks, and it was funny, but it felt like he not bothered that much.
After this
last
game,
night,
they're
Mr.
fantastic.
Bothered it was
fantastic.
And it was great.
It's very funny, Tone. Come on, the bit with the shot.
But now I'll give you a bit of a deeper insight.
Right.
You're the manager. You're doing a meeting at the club, and you're talking, and the lad looking out the window. Cole. Yeah. And now, I don't know, I wasn't there, but the way he acts, I feel like he's not really interested in all the information. And why did he leave City? Because maybe Foden was a bit more reliable, but then the upside of him is that you do let him loose.
Is that not part of the joy of Cole Palmer, though? We talked about it on a recent podcast. I loved one of the moments of the season was when Chelsea and Nottingham Forest players were brawling on the touchline and Cole Palmer just sat down about 2 yards away and went, get on with it, lads, for God's sake.
Johnny Greaves got fined once for that in a Milan derby.
What, not for getting stuck in?
For not getting involved in a fight.
Really?
Yeah.
He got fined?
He got fined. He said it was the Milan derby. There was a complete all-off, and it was like 21 players were involved. Like the two goalkeepers came running in, everyone was fighting, and Jimmy just sat on the ball waiting for it all to finish.
And he got fined.
And when he walked in, when he got his pay packet the following week, there was money taken out of it, and he was fined for not getting involved in the fight, basically for not supporting his teammates.
Those were the days, not getting stuck in. I'd imagine Cole Palmer wouldn't, but I mean, I know, I understand what you're saying, Tone, and I know you've played the game, so you've been in these meetings, but I think that's part of the joy of Cole Palmer. You know, these interviews where he stood with the Man of the Match award in his shorts, and the interview says to her, "Oh, that's a funny place to keep your award." He's like, "Well, I've not got any pockets, have I?" It's just
no, you know what it's like.
That's the same person who rolls.
Right, you'll love this, right? I look at it and I go, it's like looking at Oasis, isn't it? And you're getting.
Are you just having a go at Northern people here?
No. Are you
just ganging up on Northern people? Now Gregor's not here. It's just you two.
But you're right. He's got so much quality. At the end of the day, he was the difference between the two teams, and he's very capable of that. He's got that ability of Chris Waddle, Eden Hazard. He gets people to a standstill in the way he plays, and then he wants to go over a short space of time very quickly, and he does it better than anybody in the Premier League. That's one of his best strengths. You know, when you see Eden Hazard set someone up, get them literally standing still. Waddle done that brilliantly. That was one of his main things. Cole Palmer does that, and I just feel like he's that sort of guy that Liam Gallagher who just goes, well, this is the way I play. And I wonder, Did Pep look at that as maybe, I need, Phil Foden looks more robotic than he's ever done. Jack Grealish has done.
Needs more intensity and focus.
Do they need a bit of Cole Palmer in them where they go, this is what you boys can do. You can make a difference.
Well, we talk about that a lot in modern football, don't we, Martin? That idea of footballers being overly coached, and Jack Grealish is potentially a good example of that. Superstar at Aston Villa, everyone loves him. Mercurial talent, and he just slightly loses it. I mean, the other great thing about the Cole Palmer interviews was him saying about his thinking on the pitch. He was going, I'm sick of passing sideways. Next time I get it, I'm going for it. And that's just so wonderfully simple and pure, isn't it?
But could he say that to Guardiola when if he would have been in the City team? Well, I'm going to just go forward. I'm going to go for it.
Look, but then, no team passes sideways more than Chelsea. If you know what I mean, they are very, very
predictable,
regimented. Very regimented in the way they approach. Sometimes or a lot of the time. Cole Palmer's an exceptional player. He really is an exceptional player. I think, City have made a mistake. I mean, you don't, not too many mistakes that they make, but that looks like a mistake. He looks like a player that should have fitted in at Manchester City. And one of the things that he's been missing this season, I mean, at the start, before Christmas, the numbers for Jackson and Palmer together were going to, if they stayed on course, were going to overtake Son and Kane.
Yeah, they're amazing.
Their numbers together were, and that's with a guy that he probably needs a few more chances to score than he should do, really. I mean, so you look at that and think, right, so what would Palmer's numbers be like with a great finisher, truly great finisher, which Nicholas Jackson isn't at the moment. So there's that as well. I mean, I know Jordan Henderson always claimed that when people said that, that his Liverpool career got off to this poor start and he doesn't make any goals or whatever his point always was, he was feeding Andy Carroll. If he'd have been feeding Mo Salah from the start, people would have thought of him as a different player.
Yeah. See, that's a massive point. What you've just said there is right. There's all these clubs, and Martin's alluded to a few, all wanting a centre forward. But if you look at the centre forwards at some of the main clubs, the ones that stand out feature is not all of them are very good finishers. Darwin Núñez is not a good finisher.
No.
Rasmus Højlund is not a good finisher. Nicholas Jackson's not a good finisher. So there's three of the main clubs.
Who's the best finisher in the Premier League then, regardless of status of club? Who's the one who, like, for all of us, that you like clean through on goal? I'm not including forwards, not including Mo Salah. If it's a striker, what?
An out and out.
Who's one you think of?
Brentford.
Vizza's done well, but then
Mbeumo, they've both scored 19 goals.
But Mbeumo's more of a Salah position, isn't it?
I was going to say that's
Mateta, confidence-wise, Isaac, I
think that's a fair one. Yeah, that's probably the best. He has a lot more guile in his finishing.
Yeah,
I've always said if you go some of the centre forwards I played with, and I was, from Sheringham to Clive Allen to John Aldridge. John Aldridge was an amazing finisher for someone, and John would never mind me saying this because he'd admit himself he wasn't the best technically,
right?
But he was a fantastic finisher. Yeah.
So you think we've got all these like hard-working forwards who have slightly forgotten how to score a goal? We've
just gone through the teams.
Yeah.
We've named, 3 or 4 of the top teams that
Watkins,
Martin was saying.
Watkins is, but his
finishing is...
His finishing is not his absolute strong point at all.
No, and he will get numbers.
Yeah.
They still get numbers, but you think... Well, blimey, there was way better. If you took European football and then you go Harry Kane, who is a good finisher, and Lewandowski, they're the greatest ones, but they are fabulous finishers.
Yeah. The transfer merry-go-round could focus on strikers. Chelsea fans, if you've got views on how you should spend your summer, get in touch with me, tom.clark@thetimes.co.uk. Chaps, we've touched on a couple of little things here. I just wanted a little quick-fire round of topics. Tony, we mentioned briefly your team of the season. I'm just going to read it out as we did quite a few of our colleagues on a Monday and Thursday show. We've got Matt Sells in goal, Milos Kerkez at left-back from Bournemouth, Van Dijk and Dean Hewson at centre-backs, Jake O'Brien at right-back.
Yeah.
That's one of the most left field shouts, but you think even for half a season, he's worth his place?
Well, I was at a few games when I was watching him live. I watched him at Brighton and he came up against Matoma and I thought, that's an interesting battle. He absolutely covered me. Literally denied him nearly every opportunity. He's got these long legs like Dan Burn will make a challenge. I thought he was superb. And yes, he played half a season, but I kept thinking, the right backs, obviously someone like Reece James was fit and have played a bit more. I think the problems at right back at Arsenal because they had loads of injuries and Ben White and others. And the Trent example, Conor Bradley not quite ready. So I was going for all these type of players. I just thought it's half a season he's done. He was one of the main reasons why they stayed up.
We love it. Yeah, and then you've got a midfield three of Caicedo, who we've talked about, Tielemans and Declan Rice, and then a front three of Salah, Isak and Eberechi Eze.
Yeah.
Martin, any major qualms with that? Anything you can think of?
I wrote one down.
Yeah,
let's have it. Mine's quite same goalkeeper. It's
Matt Sells,
because you people say David Raya, but he's Nottingham Forest, and
one of the great discoveries of the season at 34 as well. I think Matt Sells. What a lovely story.
I would put Trent in at right back. I totally take Tony's point. I would put Trent in because I just look at the pressure he's been under this season, and I think he's a beautiful footballer. Milinkovic at Nottingham Forest, I think is one of the main.
There's a few for us, just like Anya at right back, isn't it?
Absolutely. Anya was very close. Yeah. And obviously Virgil van Dijk. Mark Cucurella at left back, I think he's been Chelsea's outstanding player this season. I really do.
There's not a lot in it between Kerkez and Cucurella. Because it's again like Martin. He was one that came straight to mind, but I also thought Kerkez had been so durable over the season. How much football he played.
Kerkez is the hipster's shout, Tone. That's why you've gone for it.
He's a new Liverpool player.
I just think with Cucurella, he's going to be one of those Kyle Walker types. That it's going to go overnight because you see the forward positions he gets himself into because he knows he's so quick going. Maybe he just looks quick because of that hair.
Yeah.
But he's got to be. He must be really quick because that hair is a dragnet. That is and And he's so quick back, and you just think this is going to go like it did with Carl Walker, where suddenly there's going to be one day when he just can't make that recovery run.
But for now, one of the stars. Your midfield, Martin?
My midfield is quite Newcastle heavy, actually. It's Gravenberch, who I think has been magnificent for Liverpool. And then the two Newcastle fellas, Grimash and Tonali.
Yeah.
I think Tonali's had a fantastic season.
Well, I think the two of us and Gregor had a conversation at one point maybe about how Newcastle have potentially got the best collective midfield three.
Powerhouse midfield.
Yeah, absolutely, So and great shouts.
And then Salah, obviously.
Yeah.
Alexander Isak, although he went off the boil towards the end. And I've got to find room in there for Bruno Fernandes, because you do wonder if Man U might have actually got relegated if it wasn't for Bruno Fernandes.
I think it's a great shout. Fernandes could easily be in a team of the season.
Because he's just he's carried the club. And I know I wrote a column the other day saying that he wasn't that good and he wouldn't get into Real Madrid's team and stuff like that. I didn't say he wasn't that good. I said he wouldn't get into Real Madrid's team. What I said was he's good for Manchester United.
Yeah.
I still think that is true. I think if he played for a real elite team, the certain weaknesses that he's got in his game would show up a lot more.
Right.
But at United, he's so head and shoulders above anything else on the field, and you do wonder what would have happened to them.
Yeah.
They might lose. They might start losing to scratch teams from like Malaysia and Hong Kong and stuff like that.
Indeed, we will talk about that exact thing happening in the second half of the show. I just wanted to mention one other story that's on the Times website. It's about Arsenal's interest in Leroy Sané, the Bayern Munich forward. We were talking in that segment about Chelsea, about forwards and this merry-go-round that's going to happen. Are we all of the definite opinion, and it was raised by James Gilbrand on Monday, that Arsenal will and definitely do need a striker, because there's part of me that thinks I can see Arteta signing like
do you not think
two forwards?
Do you not think someone should just get hold of whoever's in charge of it at Arsenal by the lapels and just go buy a centre forward?
I'm sure a lot of the fans would want them to do
Josh
that.
Kroenke or someone just comes in and buy a centre forward.
See,
I am excited to make that a very small clip that every fan group from like Manchester United, Chelsea, Arsenal can just play over the summer. And Martin Samuel just go, buy a centre forward for Christ's sake.
Grab someone by the
So I take that's definitely your answer to the question, Martin. Tony, are you of the same opinion? Because there's part of me that can see them signing like maybe Leroy Sané and other even Mbeumo or someone.
Yeah.
Lots of forwards who score goals.
Yeah.
Without having someone that number 9 that the fans seem to be, and Martin Samuel seem to be craving. What do you think?
Well, I'm certainly on more on Martin's side.
Right.
I'm fed up with meeting people, different, sort of. I go sometimes to a dinner or meeting someone who works for a certain company, and
you've got loads of mates. We get it. We get it.
Database. And they'll tell me the data of the type of forward they want, or they should be getting.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay. So, and one of the people I was with the other night said to me, well, when they run the data at Arsenal, the type of centre forward they needed, it was Havertz. I said, right. Well, wouldn't they have wanted a goal scorer that could probably double the numbers of him? Because there's this idea, well, it's not just about the centre forward, that as you're accumulating the three of them together, they get a lot of goals. Like Firmino, Salah, Mane, all that type of idea. And I said, but you can have a goal scorer who sets incredible records, because if you look at Bayern and you look at Barcelona and you look at all these great teams, Benzema at Real Madrid and others, they had a fantastic goal scorer that added to the goal tally by the end of a season. It's just like a goalkeeper denying chances.
Yeah.
You have to have a goal scorer. If Arsenal bought a guy who was going to guarantee them 25 or whatever league goals a season, which they've had in the past, by the way, they would be way more likely to win the title. And I hate all this idea of just the data is what's telling us what they need, what type of striker. Use your eyes. Your eyes are telling you, a bit like Martin strangling.
I think it was grabbed by the lapels, Tone. Not quite strangling. We've nearly gone the whole season without getting cancelled. Let's not ruin it now.
You know what I mean? On types of strikers, and I look at I could give you a list of about 6 or 7 strikers who I played with who were fabulous finishers that definitely accumulated more points for the team.
Yeah.
And that is what Arsenal need. You don't have to go much more, deeper than that and start looking at all the other aspects of the game. If you're... Think of Aguero. Aguero was the typical striker that in a moment, if you need it, he'll deliver.
Yeah.
That's what they need.
Right. That's me told. Then no, Leroy, it's nice that you're interested, son. You go and find a team elsewhere.
But you know what? They've tried it the other way. They've tried it without the centre forward and they haven't won the league. So... why don't you try it with the centre? It's like Tottenham. It's like Tottenham. You've tried 17 years of winning nothing. Now let's see what happens if you win something and keep the manager. Yeah. Just keep the manager that won something and see what happens. Because if you've tried it the other way, keeping managers that won nothing and you've carried on winning nothing, you've now got one that's won something. Let him have a go for another year.
You've answered my final question of the quickfire round, which was that this time last week you were on your way back from Bilbao. Having watched Tottenham end that wait for a trophy, you then wrote very passionately, almost grabbing Daniel Levy by the lapels and saying, "Don't sack him now."
Yeah.
Tony, would you be in agreement with Martin? Ange stays?
Well,
we're still waiting for news about whether he will stay and could be gazumped by the time this podcast comes out.
I don't look at this as just a coin flip type of question where you go yes and no. I think it's way more complex than that because obviously transfers are involved. You have to go over the whole season. You look at the injuries that you've accumulated over a season. You look at the budget that's available. Are you willing to give 150 million and how big a say does Ange say? I think that's the club can answer. Would I keep him? Or if you was asking me, do I think he should stay?
I am, yeah. Go on.
I don't know.
You sound like Gregor.
Confused.
You sound like Gregor. You sound like Gregor. Gregor's not here this week. He's having a few days on holiday and he's not here today. Both things can be true is what you need to say.
Both things can be true.
I'm not sitting on the fence, but I don't know. The answer isn't...
You're quite close to it, I've got to say.
You are sitting on the fence.
It's a really tough one. We're obviously not in the meetings with what's gone on between Daniel Levy and the manager and all this all over the course of a season.
Be good if we were. I'm with you, Martin. He's got to stay. Daniel, if you're listening, he's got to stay.
I just think you just give him the year just to see if you can build on it.
Yeah.
But Martin, that after 10 games, if their season started dreadfully, he's more likely not to stay. So you're really saying, not give him the year, you're saying, give him the first 10 games.
Well...
No, is that not fair?
Well, look, no more than you'd look at any other manager after 10 games or whatever. If they were 17th, at Christmas, same as this season, I can absolutely see where you go. See, what I said in that piece, and I made everyone compares it with Eric Ten Hag, and everyone says, Manchester United made this emotional decision when they won the FA Cup, but the evidence was already there with Eric Ten Hag because he'd won the Carabao Cup the season before, and it hadn't really done much to improve Manchester United. Nothing much had changed. So you'd actually seen Manchester United with a trophy under Eric Ten Hag, and you'd seen that it didn't really do that. Nothing was galvanised. But I look at other examples of when something similar has happened. Roberto Di Matteo winning the Champions League with Chelsea. Now, Abramovich didn't want Di Matteo. That's why there was a gap before he got the job full time. And Abramovich didn't want him. And Abramovich always regretted being sort of boxed into a corner and made to a point of feeling as if he had to appoint Di Matteo. But he'd won the Champions League, and people forget this, and the FA Cup.
Yeah.
He won 2 trophies. And you think, well, what would have happened had you not appointed him? What would that have done to the players? What would all of, the ramifications for that could have been ruinous. And Di Matteo never made it to Christmas. But I still don't think Abramovich was wrong to give him the job because you had to at that time. You had to, show that meant something. Otherwise, you would basically be saying, we won the Champions League, it didn't really mean anything. Same with Solskjaer. When people say, they gave him the job, it all got too emotional. One, he lasted 3 years. So it wasn't like he was sacked the following month. And the other thing was, after the run that he was on, people forget what Manchester United were like before Solskjaer came in. Solskjaer came in as this feel-good, appointed this interim
There was
manager.
a massive lift in the club.
There was a massive lift in the club. They beat PSG at their own place. And you think, well, that made a big difference. The gloom lifted around Manchester United for a while, and then obviously things went back. Which may or may not all have been Solskjaer's fault, by the way. Money was spent quite badly. So I can understand those decisions. If the actual winning of things doesn't mean anything, well, what are we bothering to keep score for?
Very interesting. We're still waiting to see what will happen at Tottenham Hotspur. Loads more still to come in the second half of the show, but time for Martin Samuel's favourite part of this podcast, when I ask who am I talking about when I say a former footballer who played as a defender for Chelsea, Leeds, Stoke and Reading and won the 1998 Cup Winners' Euro tosser.
I was about to say...
I knew. I was like, he's going to do this before the end of the season. He's going to do this
Michael
before the end.
And next year, folks, what we're going to do, I'm
going to do an interesting fact about Martin Samuel every week.
Every single week.
True or false?
Every single week.
Is Martin Samuel a pain in the arse? True or false? Find out after the break. Welcome back to the Game Football Podcast from The Times. I'm Tom Clark and I've got Tony Cascarino and a pain in the arse called Martin Samuel with me, who had ruined the quiz question for all listeners by revealing that it's Michael Dubry. So the next quiz question was, is Martin Samuel a pain in the arse, true or false? Tony Cascarino?
True.
True, absolutely true.
And next year, folks, we're going to do Name That Tune with kazoos.
Honestly, let's do it.
Mate, I would definitely do that.
Let's do it.
I'll buy the kazoos.
Let's do it. You bring the kazoos. There you go.
I'll bring the kazoos and we will do Name That Tune with kazoos because it's got to be more fun than this.
Oh, you love it. I've listened to you do this quiz when Gregor does it and you're like, oh, Gregor, I know the answer. Gregor.
What are you talking about?
Isn't he, Tony? Anyway, I'm not here. He's just doing it to wind me up. Anyway, leave the kazoos.
And you don't talk. That's my normal speaking voice. This is the one I put on for the. and I bitterly regret you taking the mickey out of it.
Hey, well, I've had Tony Cascarino having a pop at Northern people in the first half of the show. I'm feeling backs against the wall. Anyway, let's talk about Manchester United because speaking of kazoos and things that are a bit daft, this post-season tour is looking like an absolute shambles already. To Kuala Lumpur. And for those who are fans of an end-of-year quiz or a bit of a football quiz, remember the name Wang Win. The 29-year-old forward from Myanmar and plays in Thailand was the goal scorer as the Asian All-Stars 11 beat Manchester United 1-0 in a post-season money-spinning friendly. I'm just going to read out a bit of Paul Hurst's match report. Yes, we sent Paul Hurst all the way to Malaysia.
Oh, Jesus Christ, what have I done with my career?
It's not far off, Martin. It's not far off. He says in this report that you can read on the Times website, more than 72,000 fans filled the seats of Malaysia's national stadium, with the most expensive tickets priced at £262, more than half the monthly wage in Malaysia. The greeting the supporters gave to their heroes in red before kickoff was akin to Beatlemania. The screams were relentless as Ruben Amorim and his players got off their red battle bus, and they continued throughout the warm-up and the first half. As the match progressed, the adulation from the fans began to dry up. What unfolded before their eyes proved to everyone present, including those who booed at the final whistle, that these players are very far from superhuman indeed. Amorim, used to nothing but undiluted support from the match-going United fans back home, actually welcomed the post-match jeers in Southeast Asia, saying, maybe it is something we need because every game that we lost in the Premier League, they were always clapping us. This is a match we should have won. We lack that hunger to win every game, every training exercise. We don't have it in us not to choke in every exercise, in every game. That is what happened. We should win these kind of games no matter what. We need to bring that inside of us in every game. Ruben, I really don't know where we go from here.
Can I just add, he didn't add it at the end. After that game, I might hand in my resignation.
I mean,
offer his resignation.
Very soon. Wasn't, when people got put in stocks and stuff like that, didn't
you're going very old school on this show, Martin. You want to grab people by the lapels. You're turning into like a Beano magazine.
Didn't enterprising peasants back then set up sort of stalls in which they sold rotting vegetation. And I can see Amorim outside Old Trafford with one of those stalls, basically, in the end, you know.
But his chat is almost like he put himself in it, though. Yeah. He put himself in it, though. We're talking about Maresca in his chat. And listen, we have a lot of Manchester United fans who listen to this podcast. Sometimes they agree with us, sometimes they do not. I do not know how you can find anything to be positive about the state of the club at the moment. It is unbelievably dire. They've gone on this post-season tour. We believe it might have made them between £5 and £8 million. I mean, it's an absolute car crash, isn't it? They've got another game tomorrow in Hong Kong on Friday. Paul Hurst will be there for that one as well.
And will then be handing in his resignation, I would have thought, alongside Amram.
But I mean,
I can't do this anymore.
Have we ever seen anything like this in terms of...
it's a friendly, who knows? I mean,
but just as we deal in stories and narratives, right?
Yeah.
As another chapter in this season.
Oh, yeah.
To have gone on a post-season tour, you just want to quietly get it out the way, couple of 3-0 wins, sign some autographs, make that £8 million and get on holiday. Yeah. And they just can't. You know, you've got the manager talking about we don't have it in us not to choke in every exercise.
If you've ever seen the film Spinal Tap, it is very much shaping up as that,
it's not far off, is it?
Puppet show and Spinal Tap.
I mean, just to bring in, we had quite a few listeners get in touch after the Europa League final show. One that I didn't read out was Barry, who got in touch saying, I cannot see a way ahead at Old Trafford. It's thoroughly depressing and frustrating. Where do we go from here? I fear for Amorim as much as I like him as a person who tells the truth. If not, he needs to block out next season. If not, he'll be history, and then it could be relegation. That's not us, listeners. Look, that is a listener who's a Manchester United.
From here, is it down to the
that is a Manchester United fan who's a listener. That is not us.
It's a Titanic, isn't it? It's the Titanic. It's sailing in the wrong direction, but it's still sinking.
Right.
That's basically what's happening because
that wasn't what happened at the side. Titanic.
What do you mean?
They drove straight to an iceberg.
Well, it's still, but it's
they were going the right way.
If they sailed in the other direction,
they'd
be all right.
No, but I mean, as in. The Titanic is representing a huge football club, which it is. Yeah. Okay, and it's floating in the wrong direction.
He was going metaphor, Martin, for God's sake, not literal.
Okay, but it's still
Let's
sinking.
Get the kazoos out now.
I look at this club and I just think everything is problematic in every way you look.
Yeah.
It is.
And that in itself is, fans are getting so disillusioned by what... I'm hearing Amorim, and how many times has he offered his resignation at Old Trafford? 2 or 3 already?
We know about. We know about.
In press conferences and a couple.
There's all sorts of suggestions about, things that have happened behind the scenes and things that he said to people or whatever.
But just in terms of, Martin, you've covered the game for a long time. Tony, you played the game and have then now worked in the media. You've got this club with such bad vibes, for want of a better word, better terminology, but the vibes, the mood in the camp must be terrible.
Well, okay, I'll give you one example.
So you've gone to this, and there's pictures and video. Paul Hurst was saying he was watching them do a training exercise around static cones on a pitch. They'd put cones out of the opposition in positions, and they've playing around, trying to pass around them and stuff.
The cones won 1-0.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the gag. But as a player, you'd be going, can I just get away from this and go on holiday? Wouldn't you?
Yeah. Well, first of all, if you were the manager in this scenario, you go to the club and you say, we can't do this tour. If we're thinking next season and getting everything in place, we do not need to go on a tour to Malaysia and play a game that's worth £5-8 million or whatever. Because to me, that's just absolute madness. I guarantee you, we went at the end of a season with Villa. We went away when Joseph Venglos was there.
Yeah.
And the whole team didn't want to go away. It was literally the end of the season. Now let's just move on and look forward to a break, come back and be refreshed, new signings come in or whatever, people come and go. And I remember Jim Walker speaking to, who was the physio, he was talking to the team and talking about all what he wanted in the sort of end of the season tour. And suddenly Jim Walker whispers in his ear. And he said, why? Why do I need to say that to them, like to the players? He said, you need to tell them. Well, he says, Jim has told me that you mustn't go out for a drink. So... you sort of think as a player.
How did that go down?
Well, the lads were like, not what we're on tour for this week. And okay,
cracked a load of tinnies just as...
What happened the first night? Everybody's out in a place called Joe Bananas.
Yeah. Oh, I know Joe Bananas.
Joe Bananas in Hong Kong.
Yeah,
we're all out in Joe Bananas in Hong Kong.
That's where we were.
We've got Peter...
China Jump Club and Joe Bananas.
Sometimes I don't know whether you're making this up.
So the whole team has ended up...
we were out in Joe Bananas. Yeah, lovely stuff. Like, that's... What?
No, but my point was that,
I know that.
He was better off saying, go out and have a couple of beers. We'll get ourselves right for the game. We'll play the game, but we'll enjoy the trip as well.
Yeah. But that's as much as I know lots of people say footballers are paid an obscene amount of money, and they are. But there's still people who want, there's lots of videos in the last couple of days of Scott McTominay out in Naples having the absolute time of his life.
With the Pope.
And quite right, with the Pope on the piss. That's a joke, but I couldn't help myself. But it's important, isn't it? He's worked incredibly hard.
What do we do in the media when we get to a certain... If there's awards and you win some and people go out and have a gathering, we have a Christmas party.
We have one glass of water and take it very seriously, Tony.
Bought copious amounts of champagne when we won Newspaper of the Year last week.
I'm very excited for the end of season game podcast party that's going to be paid for. All expenses paid, isn't that right?
Second half performance.
Producer Callum nervously nodding his head across the room.
Second half performance by Tottenham at the weekend. Was you surprised that Brighton got all them goals in the second half?
No, not at all.
No, I don't think anybody was.
No.
Because they'd celebrated winning something, and I hope you could say, well, Man United haven't celebrated, but it feels as part of me, there is a time you say, you need to let them have a drink. Let's just draw a line. Let's try and find some sort of camaraderie, a group togetherness.
Well, that's the thing. Would they not be doing...
Part of the problem they've got, and this is why they're out trying to get 5 million quid, 8 million quid, and it's very hard to have much sympathy because they were the architects of bringing all this in. Manchester United can't buy their way out of trouble here.
Yeah,
this is a real problem for them because in the old days, they would you could make mistakes and go again. You really could.
Yeah.
If your owner was a wealthy man who wanted to invest, you could buy a load of rubbish and it doesn't work, and then you go, right, we go again. Right, okay. But you can't anymore. United have spent that money, and now they go, right, okay, well, we'd like to throw a couple of 100 million quid at this and see if we can get the team that Amorim wants. And go, no, you've spent the money. You're now there with the PSR rules, and the only way you can get any money in now is to sell players. So, Marcus Rashford, 40 million quid, but 40 million quid ain't much, really, in terms of what they need to do. So, there's an offer for Bruno Fernandes from Saudi Arabia, and you're looking at it thinking, that's like the Ravens leaving the tower. That one, if they sell Bruno Fernandes, what the hell have they got there? So they are in a real problem. Amorim might not be the right guy for this. I like Amorim, but I think the media likes Amorim because he speaks very well.
He's quote machine and bloody love him.
Never been a great fan of having one system and you play it regardless of whatever players you've got, and I've said that all along. But you admire his honesty and the way he takes responsibility on himself, perhaps too much so at times. But the other problem is 3-4-3. Not many people play it.
No.
You are setting up a squad, if they do manage to make all these changes, ring all these changes, now you've got a squad that's set up to play 3-4-3.
Yeah.
If it doesn't work, if 3-4-3 doesn't turn out to be the answer for Manchester United in the Premier League, and some people think it will not be, if it doesn't work, whoever they get to come in next,
going to rip it up
it's
again.
Almost certainly, as you walk through the door, says, well, the first thing
Crystal Palace manager.
Yeah. Well, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to bin 3-4-3.
Yeah, very.
So it's another massive gamble.
Yeah, absolutely.
Built around, recruitment of personnel. you only had to see Anthony last night up against a good left back, barely got a kick the entire game.
Yeah.
Money was spent very badly at Manchester United. It
Absolutely.
Really was.
It's a big summer for Manchester United. I would encourage all listeners to check out Paul Hurst's coverage from the tour out in Asia on the Times website. Now, from the ridiculous to the sublime to finish and the Champions League final, no British teams are there. But two of the finest British journalists will be there, Johnny Northcroft and Martin Samuel. And yes, I did have to change that from English to British when I remembered Johnny was Scottish. Hey! That's when I was writing that. But Martin, you're going to be there. What did you say? I'm Puerto Rican?
Yeah.
You're a tosser. Inter Milan v PSG. Martin, we're excited about this, aren't we?
Okay.
Yeah. Tony, you're excited about this, aren't we? Fade out, Callum, will you? For God's sake, can't be bothered with this anymore. Tony, former Marseille legend, Tony Goal, of course. You're going to be cheering on Inter Milan, I presume. Yes, you have to say that.
All our French listeners, never be invited back to Marseille ever again.
But they are very proud of being the only French team to have won the European title. So this is a big deal for your former club.
I don't think there'll be any bars in Marseille cheering on even the slightest inkling of another, French team winning, especially PSG, winning the Champions League.
They will be all Inter Milan. But Martin, second go at this. You can do. You've got a choice here. No. You've got a choice. PSG, everyone's neutral team of the tournament, going to finally win this trophy. Big night for them. I've asked him a genuine question. You can't. Yeah. Come on.
I mean, look. You'd like to see the football fan in you would like to see PSG. I think because they play such beautiful football. Having said that, I mean, I've got enormous admiration for Inter Milan and the way they played, and I think we might overvalue PSG a little bit in this country this season because they've knocked all of our teams out.
Yes.
So
we've seen a lot of them as well.
We've seen a lot of them, and there's a lot of and you go, they've beaten Arsenal and they've beaten Aston Villa and. It's all our teams that they beat, and then you sort of forget that Inter Milan have knocked out Bayern Munich and Barcelona, and that's there were two.
Yes,
they were
true.
the two Champions League favourites. Probably. Once you got to the knockout stage, Liverpool as well. PSG, Liverpool as well. Sorry, so I knew there was a third one. Liverpool, Aston Villa, and Arsenal, but the other lot have knocked out Barcelona and Bayern Munich, and you think. It's two bloody good teams.
Yeah.
The pedigree, if you're drawing form lines and stuff for this season, these are the two. Yeah. These are the two form European teams. So it should be a great final. I've got a tiny degree of bias towards PSG because I've seen a lot of them, as you say, and I really, really like their football. Yeah,
should be an absolute.
Done an amazing rebuild.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Considering the Spain,
it'd be great for him as well, as I think as well. And for Inzaghi. So you've got two great managers as well, two young managers who would be a great moment for as well.
And good for those two countries as well because it does get dominated this tournament now by us and Spain and to some extent Germany, but really only one team in Germany. So it would be good to have a winner from France. It would be good to have a winner from Italy.
Absolutely.
It hasn't had it for a little while.
You can read about all about that match from Johnny and Martin on the Times website this weekend. Tony Cascarino and Martin Samuel, thank you very much for joining me, I think. Thank you too for listening. We'll be back on Monday and bringing the kazoos. We'll see you then.